the Empowered Life. My name is Yvonne, and this channel is all about bringing you content that's empowering, encouraging and inspiring. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. Also, if you like the content that I share, don't forget to hit the like button. So today is a bit of a different video. I'm really excited because this is my first proper interview with someone on my channel. I had done an interview before, but that was just a quick street interview with somebody called Charlie. That was like about 2 years ago. But with these new circumstances that we find ourselves in at the moment with the whole COVID pandemic, you have to come up with innovative ways to do new things. So I want to take the time to welcome my very special guest. Her name is Alethia Lee. She is founder of Health New. Hi, Alethia.
Hi, Yvonne.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Just enjoying the time out, you know, to refocus and to really get to grips with this new environment that we're living in now.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's all kind of a new experience for a lot of people in this time because everybody's having to try different things to, you know, connect with people.
That's right. And stay healthy as well.
Yeah. which I'm sure that you're going to be able to tell us all about, give us some tips as well.
Yes, definitely.
So Alethia is, as I said, founder of Health New. She's also, is it a Forex entrepreneur?
Yes, I'm a Forex trader and I've got a small team as well, so yeah.
She's also a wife and a mother, so she is definitely living the empowered life, a woman who is doing it all. And today we're just going to talk about her journey because where she is now is not where she actually started. And we met actually in January at, what event was it? I think it was a Race to the Top event. Yeah, it was the Race to the Top event.
That's right.
Yeah, and it was held at New Scotland Yard. And
yeah.
It was an event that was put on to empower women to succeed. So that is how we initially met. And on talking, we found that we had a lot in common in terms of our journey, our career journey, especially like the latter part of our journeys. And I just thought it'd be a really good opportunity to ask Alethia to come on this channel and just to talk about that journey, really. So you started off working in HR.
Yeah, that's right.
So tell us a little bit about what that was like. How long ago was that?
Oh, wow, it seems like light years away now. That was way back in, I think that was about 2009. I started out in human resources, and it was a very challenging journey. So it's something I discovered I wanted to do. I'd studied it way back in 2004 and had wanted to get into the actual sector, but had found that there were many barriers and it was often quite a challenge just to get even the most junior roles in human resources. And back then in 2008, I was working for an insurance company and they had a very small HR department and they let me do a few little things, but it was never really possible to secure that permanent position. So whilst aspiring to be in human resources, I was working in customer service and sales, which was really quite a hardy training ground to prepare me for what was to come later. Because it's so interesting how in life we go through circumstances, but they actually build and prepare us for the times to come, even if we can't fully see it.
Most definitely.
So whilst in that position, I managed to get onto a postgraduate diploma human resources practitioner course, which was quite sought after at the time. And it was just amazing how the doors opened and I was able to get onto the course without even fully being in the sector, with an unconditional offer, which many people were always mesmerized by and asked me how I achieved it. And I said, you know what, I can't put it down to myself. I have to put it to God, because God is the one that's opened the doors for me. And I actually was in that course for 2 years. It was 2 years of a course and it was really demanding because it was an evening course. But I just became a bookworm and just immersed myself in it and really enjoyed it. And whilst on the course, one of my cohorts actually found out about a role that came up and I went for it and managed to get that role. And that's how my real human resources journey started, in HR administration. And then that followed on to HR advisor. And then I moved on from that company to Bromley College, where I was HR business partner there. And then moved on to a change management role at the Salvation Army, where I supported the team to spearhead one of the biggest change management projects in the Salvation Army in 100 years, which was quite an experience. There was lots to learn. I grew so much. But before starting that role, I actually discovered that I needed to work more on my health. Yeah.
So before we go on to your health journey, let's just go back a little bit. So you were doing all these fantastic jobs in HR. You really loved all the roles that you did. You know, you were studying, you know, outside of your work time, because this is something that you thought was a really great opportunity to get into. So you talked about your job in 2009. How long were you in your last HR traditional role? So when I mean traditional employment role, that's like, you know, working directly for an employer.
Yeah, that was about 2009. Because after that, I went on to doing project work, because I was really in the valley of decision about what I wanted to do, but obviously still use my skills to generate income at that time.
Okay, so let's just talk a little bit about that, the last HR job you had before you went into your project work. So what kind of brought about the change? So how long were you in that last HR job, first of all?
I was in that role for, I think it was about 4 years or so, 3 to 4 years.
And what was kind of the catalyst where your feelings started to change towards that role? So you were in this role, you know, initially you got into it because, you know, HR was what you loved to do, you know, and you're in this role for 4 years. So what started to change for you in terms of, I suppose, falling out of love with the role, or feeling different about it, or, you know, wanting to do something else? What was kind of the catalyst for the changes?
Well, I think that the main catalyst was the personality fit. So I've always been someone who likes to help people. Like, my friends have always been the type, they've always come to me for advice and to work out their problems or how they can find a solution to something. And ultimately, I went into human resources to help people. So I wanted to be able to help people to nurture their careers, to make sure that they got fair treatment in the workplace. And I actually discovered once in the midst of the profession that although we do look out for best interests, they're not always, it did not always marry up with my personality and my view of how I wanted to help people.
Okay.
And as a result, that created a lot of stress for me, you know, especially when you see the mindset of various decisions that have to be made, when you've got to, you know, be part of a change management program and people's got to be made redundant, and you realize you've got to tell people their whole world's going to change, and you've got to manage those expectations and emotions, and even being part of the process of implementing those decisions was quite emotionally challenging. And I found it wasn't something that I really looked forward to doing whenever it came up as part of my role. It wasn't always my role, but it was part of it. So yeah, I think that was the first part that woke me up to that. And actually, I think the main catalyst for me was when I actually led a change management program. And the first time I went through the process of letting people know they didn't have any jobs anymore, it actually really emotionally hit me. And obviously it made me stronger afterwards, but I also knew it wasn't something that I wanted to continue to have to be part of as part of the work that I was doing.
Yeah, it must have been, you know, very difficult to actually have to deliver that type of news to people, because obviously it's very life-changing for a lot of people to hear that, you know, either they're going to be made redundant or there's going to be some type of change that is going to affect their life and their family. So I can understand that, you know, that was probably very difficult. So you briefly mentioned then during this time having a kind of journey of discovery in terms of your health. Tell us a little bit about that, because you kind of mentioned it just as, you know, you were in this job, just as you were leaving, you were starting to think about, or you were on a journey to start to discover things about your health. And I suppose that probably led you onto this path today. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so as a mother, I've got two wonderful children. I've got a 13-year-old and I've also got a 3-year-old. But between, what's that?
As well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting, isn't it? That those teenage years become quite challenging.
Yeah, tell me about it.
But in between my 13-year-old and my 3-year-old, I actually lost some babies.
Oh.
So in the midst of that whole kind of realization process of what had happened and trying to get to the root of it, I didn't really feel like the medical profession were really able to define that for me. And I think that's really where my inquisitive journey started. And really looking back in my life, I've always been interested in health and nutrition. You know, I'd be the type of person to feel like having a particular fruit or vegetable and then go and Google, oh, what's it good for? You know, and that's really in the early days where my inquisitiveness started.
Oh.
While I was working in HR back in 2009, I started to do a few things around being more focused about what I was eating, because I realized that, especially during doing office work and being in a stressful environment, there were always biscuits and chocolates, you know, all the things that we indulge in to get us through those stressful moments, even though we don't know why our body asks us for it.
Yeah, typical office environment. When I was in traditional employment, it was exactly the same thing. On the desk, just laden with sugary goods, but I was always very good and I never really eat them. But I can definitely relate.
Yeah, and I think for me, because I had always been slim, so like from a child up until about maybe like having my son, I'd always considered myself to be quite slim, and even afterwards, even though I did hang on to a bit of weight after having him, I never really saw myself as being someone that had a lot of weight on. So in my mind, I was always thinking, okay, yeah, I have that odd biscuit or sweet or whatever it is, but it's okay, you know, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
You know, and then I remember discovering Grays. I don't know if you've heard of Grays. They're a company that like do healthy snacks. And I just
Grays.
What's that? Grays, Graze, Grays.
Okay.
So at the time, I thought they were quite healthy snacks. I'm not quite sure now, but you know, you have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
So I started to get them delivered to the office as healthy snacks, and I kind of had that as a kind of implementation into the office. Alongside all the other sugary delights were some nuts and dried fruit and things to nibble on, you know, as a balance, so to speak. And I think I started fasting maybe once a week, and I did see some changes in my body frame and how I felt, but it was kind of like the precursor to actually finding out more.
Okay.
And then when I moved on from that role in 2009 and went to Bromley College, I actually found out I was expecting again soon after I started, and then ended up having to be on bed rest for a considerable amount of time, and then lost the baby. So once again, I found myself in this place where I was like, okay, what is it that I can do to turn my health around? Because clearly there's something going on which I'm not able to address because I just don't have the knowledge and understanding. So once I was able to pick myself up emotionally and, you know, get through the whole process of the loss itself, you know, I started to look into it more deeply, and I got in contact with a friend of my mum's who told me of someone who was doing health screenings and creating eating programs for people. So I jumped at the opportunity, had a health screening, showed up quite a few different deficiencies in my body around like nutrients and vitamins and minerals, and just certain dysfunctions in the way how my body was operating, which could be modified through focusing on my diet and detoxification of the body. So this now piqued my interest in body detoxification and being more focused about my nutrition. And as a result of having the health screening, I was put onto a program which initially was for 28 days. And it was a vegan-based program. So it was all like raw or steamed vegetables, all plant-based, very clean eating, a combination of having smoothies and just salads. And it was actually quite transformational in a sense that I went from having what would be probably the traditional Caribbean diet all the time, you know, which would be like the typical, you know, rice and peas with some kind of meat and maybe a little bit of salad or steamed veg or fried fish or, you know, ackee sauce, that kind of thing.
All lovely food.
And I just, oh, how am I going to survive? How am I ever going to get back to enjoying the foods that I've grown up in and love? But actually, it was a transitional phase that made me look at food in a new way.
Yeah.
So part of the process was that I was having a lot of liquid foods, so a lot of juices and smoothies,
Yeah.
and mainly having one meal a day, but it was all plant-based. And the first discovery which blew my mind was that actually I wasn't hungry.
Mm.
Now, the thought of having a smoothie for breakfast and not being hungry till lunchtime just doesn't seem normal.
Mm.
But then I became aware of the fact that really what the body needs is nutrition, not food, not what we feel like eating,
Mm.
but actually nutrition.
So can I
And
ask you a question at this point?
yeah,
When you made all these changes in your diet and you know, as a way of discovering what was kind of the issues, because you talked, you know, briefly about that you had some pregnancies that didn't go to full term. When you started on this new journey of, you know, the new diet and everything else, afterwards, did you go back and get tests to find out if, you know, it was a contributing factor, the way you were eating or the things that you were putting in your body? Were they like a contributing factor to why they believed that these pregnancies didn't go to full term? Or was it just a thing that you just decided to do just to enable you to have like better pregnancies?
well, typically from the medical profession's perspective, no, because
Oh,
they don't really embrace the concept that nutrition can really have an impact on how the body functions, so to speak. Because typically you go to your doctor, they'll say, you tell them you've got some kind of condition, they'll
yeah,
do an investigation, they'll either tell you to take some kind of medication or maybe have some kind of intervention, whether it's like physiotherapy or some kind of gynecological intervention, which in my case is what they recommended. So for me, they actually diagnosed me as having cervical incompetence, which is where your cervix is not able to hold the baby in your womb, so to speak. So once you get to certain points in your pregnancy, the cervix spontaneously starts to dilate and open,
okay,
which as a result causes the loss of the baby prematurely. There were also components with my particular health condition whereby I was getting infections. Back then, it was just defined as what it was. So they said it was chorioamniosis, which is where the amniotic fluid develops an infection. They couldn't really define to me what the source of the infection was or why it happened, but it's just something that they knew happened in pregnancies. When I suffered my first loss, we didn't know this was something we would suffer because I'd had my son.
yeah,
He was born at 42 weeks. So there was totally nothing wrong with my cervix at that point. You know, he was born by emergency C-section after a considerable time in labour. So, you know, there was an element of him not wanting to come out. So it kind of puzzled me why I could have a child and they don't want to come out. And then all the subsequent pregnancies, I can't carry them to term. So there was that element within me that said, if you've been able to do it before, you should be able to do it again.
yeah,
You know, and this was part of my quest and my journey. So when I fell pregnant again, I think it was about 9 months after I'd had my son, nobody knew that I was going to experience the outcome that I did. And it was quite a shock and surprise. I think it was about 22, 23 weeks that I lost that baby.
okay,
And it was just literally like from one day to, I was fine one day and the next day I was like in hospital and there was nothing they could do for me. I had to just wait. So in the next pregnancy that I had, to be honest with you, because I've healed so much from the losses, I don't remember the years so clearly anymore.
yeah.
I think it's a good thing in a sense because it means I don't live my life for every single anniversary of the loss.
No, and that's, you know, that is something that's completely admirable, because I know for, you know, I've only known a couple of women that's happened to where they've lost a baby. For them, it was really a really traumatic experience that every year around the same time, it would become a time of real pain for them, you know. So, you know, I've
Yeah,
never been through that. So, you know, I can't understand how that affects somebody, but obviously to lose a baby is a very traumatic experience.
it's very traumatic. And I can honestly say within the first maybe couple of years after losing, I did go through that persistent cycle in a sense.
Yeah,
So I would remember, and then I might find myself in a kind of emotional state of maybe slight depression. But As the years have gone by, I've identified the cycles. And I suppose with my health journey, I've also learned about understanding my emotional state as well as my physical state. And also it's heightened my understanding of my spiritual state, because I'm very much aware of the fact that as human beings in the likeness of God that we're created, we're not just physical beings.
That's right.
We're spiritual as well.
Yeah.
And we're mental as well. So when you start to be able to be aware of all three of those elements and bring them together into balance, it makes you a better person, because you can now be aware of all these different states.
You've gone through some really traumatic experiences, and they have led you to a new way of life, you know, in terms of your diet and discovering things about yourself. So at what point did you decide, okay, I now want to become a health practitioner, I want to set up my own company?
I had such amazing results from transforming the way how I was eating, that the only thing left for me to really focus on was what else was causing stress in my life. So essentially I'd taken away the stresses of what food I was eating and the impact that was having on my body. Health conditions that I'd had for years, like from childhood, they just disappeared.
Oh wow, fantastic.
You know, like I used to have painful periods, I no longer have painful periods. I used to have heavy periods, they were no longer heavy periods anymore. You know, my asthma disappeared. I haven't taken asthma medication in many years. And that's just my own personal experience. You know, I had eczema for many years, and that had disappeared. I had more energy. I was able to wake up in the mornings feeling ready to go, rather than being like, oh, is that the time of morning that it is? So
you eradicated the impact it was having on your health. And you said that now you started to be aware of other stressful factors in your life. So, so what happened?
I realised that work was the next stress that I needed to actually address.
Sorry to interject, but I must say at this point as well, in terms of the work environment, when I was in my last job, the impact it had on my health, anxiety, you know, at times I'd be very, the night before going to work, I wouldn't be able to sleep because I was so anxious, worried about.
That's right, I can identify with that.
Yeah, the stress of the environment, you know, and just being around certain people and the environment and the workload and stuff, it really did have an impact on my health. And when I left, it was like the day I left and walked out that building, it was like a huge burden that had just been lifted off my shoulders immediately. It was really, really surreal to, you know, to go through that. But I can definitely identify with you about the workplace stress. So you identified that, and then what happened?
What happened is, obviously, you know, you identify it and you home in on it. And you know it's there, but then you're not quite sure what the solution is going to be. But obviously I started to pray about it. And the amazing thing happened that one of my colleagues at work actually approached me and said, oh, you know, I want to start a health journey. I see what's been working for you, you know, because everybody used to see me bringing my lunch into work. They see me walking around with a 2-litre bottle of water around my neck, you know, just keeping hydrated and things like that. They thought I was quite radical, actually. But it was good because, you know, carrying that 2-litre water bottle around my neck actually made me remember to drink the water. And the more I drank, the lighter it got. So it was great.
So you lightened the load as the day went on.
That's right. So she asked me what she should do as the first thing. And I said, look, the main thing you need to do first is you need to cleanse your gut before you start to put any good stuff in. And this had been around the time when I started reading a book by a writer called Norman Walker about colon health. And it was such an amazing book because the health concerns we have can actually begin in our gut. You know? And now there is a lot more research emerging about how our immune system is connected to our gut, how a lot of health concerns that we have begin in our gut. And therefore it's important to maintain a good balance of health in your gut with your gut flora and the cleanliness of it. So I suggested to her, look, go and have a colonic. Now the irony of it is that I at that point had never had a colonic before.
I've had one.
Right? I've had one now. I've had loads.
It was a weird experience, you know, but I felt
it's unusual
because I used to get a lot of bloating. So afterwards, I felt light, you know. I felt like, wow, I found it uncomfortable at first, but it's something definitely that I would definitely do again.
Yes. definitely beneficial.
Yeah.
So I was also in my mind thinking, I still need to get my colonic, you know, but she listened to me and she went to have a colonic. And while she was having her treatment, the practitioner said that they were looking for a colon hydrotherapist to train. So she came back to me. She told me what had happened with her treatment and how well it had gone. And then she told me about this opportunity. And I said, well, hey, that's me. I want to learn how to be a colon hydrotherapist.
Okay.
So, you know, yeah, so my colleague told me of this opportunity to train as a colon hydrotherapist.
Yeah.
And he connected me with the practitioner that had been looking for somebody to train. And that's where the journey to transitioning my career began.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
From there, it was back to studying and upskilling. So, you know, I studied about the body and anatomy, physiology. I had to.
And you did all of this during this time you were in this in your last job. You still continued to study and stuff. Okay, good.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm a bit of a bookworm or some kind of persistent student. I can't stop. Like, there's always continuous learning involved in my life.
Yeah, I love it.
I love it. And I think the exposure to postgraduate education is actually what opened up the hunger to learn, and the realization that you can learn things from anywhere. You just need to know where to find reputable sources to understand what you need to find out.
Yeah.
And the practitioner connected me with a colon hydrotherapy lecturer who advised me on my course of action. Now, because I had no therapeutic touch background in terms of doing massage or anything like that, she suggested to me that I had to do some kind of massage. But by this time, I was actually pregnant with my daughter, who's now 3.
Oh, yeah.
So
that must have been wonderful news then, after having gone through, you know, some very difficult pregnancies, to find out that, you know, you're pregnant again and, you know, you're going to have a beautiful daughter. That must have been so amazing.
It was amazing in a sense, but it was quite psychologically testing as well.
Yeah, I bet.
So I never forget, I remember going into work the day after I found out I was expecting, and one of my colleagues, to this day, I don't know how she did this, but she looked at me and she said, you got a passenger. What do you mean I've got a passenger? She said, you got a passenger.
Yeah.
She said, you got a baby in there. I said, okay, that's our secret then. And literally, she was the first person in my office that knew I was expecting.
Yeah.
Right? So I kept it quiet for as long as I could. But I typically am a person who I show quite quickly whenever I'm pregnant.
Yeah.
So when everybody found out, they were actually quite amazed that I was able to pregnancy during such a challenging project. Yeah. So obviously, because of my past experiences with pregnancies, it was a lot about believing God that everything was going to be all right. No matter what happened, everything was going to be all right. And obviously, I had, you know, very early appointments with my consultant, who I'd known from throughout my other pregnancy losses, to, you know, discuss a plan of what to do.
That's the amazing thing when you're going through challenging things. When you have faith in God, how much that really does help in a situation. Because, you know, you can turn to God and give him these situations and he's able to kind of sustain you through it, help you through it, actually.
That's right. And even before everything happened, really, God always confirmed that it was going to happen.
Yeah.
So he sent people to tell me that I was going to have this child, to tell me everything was going to be okay. So I lived in that expectation, and it built my faith to a level where I just believed God. Doesn't matter what I saw, doesn't matter the circumstances, what propped up, I just believed God. And so much so that I never even had any interventions. So all the interventions my consultant offered me, I said, no, this time God is going to do it for me.
But then when you have these really difficult circumstances, it does actually build your faith. You know, I've definitely had loads of situations like that. Not the same as you, of course, but...
Yeah, but I mean, we all have our different experiences, but all the same, they build us up. And I think what's quite interesting is often when you live your life, it's normal to you.
Yeah.
But even though those looking on can be like, wow, look at that challenge. Oh, how hard was that? And yes, it was hard, but actually it's my life, you know? And I think that's what transforms the view of how you see it personally and how it witnesses to people that see you going through it. Yeah, so people from my church always have said to me how they've been so encouraged by the level of faith that I and my family have shown through each and every adversity and trial that we've gone through.
Yeah.
And we don't often see it that way, but that's how they see it, and that's our witness, you know, of what God has done for us and what he's brought us through.
Yeah, definitely.
You know,
you're pregnant, you're doing this HR role, this HR project and stuff. What was the timeline from doing all the studying and finding out this is a new career path that you wanted to take to actually leaving and stepping out to start your own, to start Health Renew? What was the timeline of that, from that initial journey of starting to leaving, traditional employment altogether?
So with the HR role, it was a role that was a project role. So initially it was supposed to run until June of, June of 2016. But it actually got extended until I think it was July. So literally I was facing the possibility that actually my work was going to end.
Yeah.
So it was either going to be that I was going to find another role in HR, which potentially wouldn't be possible being heavily pregnant anyway, wouldn't really be much point. And so essentially I ended that role and went into just taking time out to be pregnant and to just have my daughter. But also I started the training as I ended at Salvation Army. So I was doing training in the background. So I was doing online training for nutritional therapy, and obviously preparing to start my colon hydrotherapy qualification and doing all the studies around that, around the body and anatomy and physiology. And then I started the colon hydrotherapy training, but then I had to stop. That's because I had to go on bed rest. So my pregnancy with my daughter was fine up until about 26 weeks. Yeah. And then I started to have symptoms, which meant I had to go on bed rest. Okay. And I remained in hospital for another 2 weeks after that. Okay. And in that time, I had to survive hospital food, which was quite interesting.
Yeah.
So what I essentially did was I used what they could give me. That was the healthiest option that I could find.
Yeah.
And then I just got my family to bring in things that I could subsidise the hospital food with. So
did you get them to bring you the Caribbean food?
Yeah, I had the odd Caribbean takeaway. But typically I still made salads from my bedside. So I get them to bring salad leaves and olives and avocados, and I had my little condiment section of olive oil and black pepper and herbs and Himalayan salt. So I kind of brought my kitchen to the bedside, so to speak. And sometimes I might have something. I had something from Wagamama's maybe as a takeaway, but still very quite health inspired as much as I could do given my circumstances.
So you've gone through this period now where you've finished the HR project, you've had to go into hospital. How did you sustain yourself, if you don't mind me asking, financially after this time? Because you've now, officially left traditional employment. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you've gone on to have your baby now. So how did you sustain yourself from that period of being in hospital, leaving the project, being in hospital, having your baby?
Oh, that's okay. I mean, financially, because I'm married, so my husband was in full-time employment. Yeah. And I suppose we always kind of managed our finances in a way where one income would be good enough to cover the expenditures of the family.
Yeah.
So we had that kind of buffer zone, so to speak. And whilst in employment, I'd already paved the way for the additional studies that I needed to do, and I'd already paid for the training cost required in order to cover that transition in terms of the educational costs. So that was paid for beforehand. Also, as a mother, you get your maternity leave. So I was able to still get my maternity payments for the time that I could do. I think I actually started it a little bit early in order to bridge the gap a little bit. Yeah. And that's basically how we covered ourselves. So it's really about smart financial planning. And I think it's really important when you're going to step out into being self-employed, that you're very aware of what your monthly expenditure is, and that you know what you're spending on particular things, where your budget is allocated for the particular things that you need to pay for. Always had a spreadsheet
Yeah.
So we know like what our expenditure is. We always separate our money. So we have a separate like bank account, so to speak, to cover the costs of our expenses.
Yeah.
So that, you know, there's never, like when I was single and young and fancy free, I just had one bank account, and when the money was finished, it was finished. But now it's like we make sure that everything that needs to be covered is covered, and then we also allocate pocket money, so to speak, to cover your own individual spending.
Your journey has been quite different to mine. My self-employed journey, actually, from the time I was in my last job to actually stepping out into the unknown of, you know, my business as a self-employed entrepreneur, it was an 18-month journey. So
Wow.
so for me, I'm a woman of faith, I'm a woman of God. You know, the Lord had shown me from December 2016 that it was time for me to leave. But I put this all to the back of my mind because I thought that was bizarre. You know, me and my husband, we've been married for 15 years. I had always worked, always had two incomes, financial outgoings, you know, so, you know, I couldn't just leave. But as time went on and on and on, and when I look back actually and think about it, it was almost like a pot of hot water that was being turned up, because the pressure of the workplace and, you know, had become so unbearable. I mean, I was doing things like going in there and praying, you know, getting into work before everybody got in there and was praying over the desk, you know?
Yeah.
Because it really felt like spiritual warfare, you know, because of the amount, and because I was so very different to other people at work, I stood out. I didn't want to be part of a clique. I didn't want to get involved in all the gossip and different things that was going on. And I was a bit of an oddball. I didn't have a conflict with people. Just me being me was enough to cause conflict. But the whole time, I had periods where I was going off on sick leave for stress, you know, like 6 weeks, 8 weeks. And, you know, I had about 2 episodes of that. And I just kept having this feeling that, you know, how much more are you going to put yourself through? And in the meantime as well, you know, God was giving me visions, dreams that it was time for me to leave. And originally I was meant to leave in, I think it was August 2017. And a week before I left, I chickened out. I had other things to consider as well. You know, I'm married and things like that. But the Lord, you know, had made it very clear to me, just gave me an impression it's time for me to just leave. So then 8 months later, I left. So my journey was an 18-month journey. And all the things I was saying, you know, but, you know, we haven't saved enough, we haven't this and that, you know, the Lord just told me to leave.
Yeah.
Because, and that's what I found along this journey of being an entrepreneur, that it's really a journey of faith. I didn't even think, actually, I mean, I've been 2 years in now to being self-employed, but literally it's been like, you know, my faith in God that's been carrying me this whole time, you know, him contracts, doing all these different things, even in this whole pandemic season, you know, just having that faith. Our journeys have been completely different to get to where we've got to in terms of being self-employed, you know, on these journeys. Mine was just been like a journey of just leave, and I will show you the next step when you take this step. Basically, after you had your child and you've now, you know, you've done your qualifications, you've done all the things that you've needed to do to now get you onto the next level, the next step of your, you know, your career journey. How long then was it till you decided, right, I'm going to set up Health Renew?
I actually had a vision about Health Renew because I didn't know what name to call the business. And then I just remember I woke up one morning and Health Renew was in front of me. And it was quite ironic because it was still HR, but it was just Health Renew instead of Human Resources. So the initials were totally the same, but it was just a different it was a different direction. I think the journey with Health Renew actually began in September 2017. That's when I got my first client. They went on a health program with me, and I did a health screening with them, and they took out a course of 3 colonics, and they had a health program put together, and that was my first client. And it was all very new, and it felt really it was exciting, but it was also scary as well, because when you start to step out into self-employment, like you said, it's a journey of faith. So you have your first client, you see your first money, and then you don't know when the next client is going to come.
Because of the mindset of traditional employment, of being in that system for over 20 years, of used to having a paycheck every month, it took quite a bit of unlearning of a lot of things and learning new things to understand when you get this money in, yeah, this money has got to pay for this, and this now, but then also you've got to make it stretch this, and this until the next set of money comes in. That was one of the hardest things for me, I think, as well, you know, because traditionally we're always expected to have a paycheck every month when you've come from that traditional system of employment.
That's right. And it actually made me see money in a different way.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, when you're employed and you get a check every month, it's like every payday is like a party, and then you spend the money, and you look for the next one.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're self-employed, you get paid. I get paid, and like that money could sit there for 2 weeks, and I haven't touched it. If I haven't, you know, given my tithes, and I haven't allocated the money for this and the money for that, and I will just not touch it.
Yeah.
Not touch it rather than start spending it, and then there's not enough left to do all the things that need to be done.
Yeah. But
you know?
it took me a little while from when I left to understand that as part of the journey, you know. I had to fall on my bum a few times. I think the experience has made me more wiser with money and got me thinking about it in actually a different way.
And then I think it also opens up your mind to the fact that you've got to have multiple streams of income.
So in terms of multiple streams of income, that's one of the things that I've found on this new entrepreneur journey that is so important. And I've been constantly over the last year or so trying to develop different resources and different things that are going to bring in income. So I'm an author, so I write books. I'm writing my 3rd book at the moment. I'm just in, you know, the final stages of preparing to launch my first online course as well. So because I'm a qualified trainer, I decided not only to do workshops face-to-face, I wanted to do online courses as well. Yeah. So I want to start to develop my own line of products that are going to help with different things. And You Empowerment, my company, is about facilitating empowerment to people through products and services. So that could be through empowerment coaching, speaking, through organising events, through publishing. I do so many different things to do with empowering people. So those are all separate income streams as well. But when I did my business plan, I always knew that everything had to be done in phases. So at the moment, all the things that I do offer on my company, I also do consulting as well. It's all going to be in stages. So at the moment, the things that have really taken off, which is bringing in income really quickly, is people hire me to do events, you know, my books, contracts. I do like contract work as well. And that is allowing me to have the time and the income to develop the other things. I think I heard once that somebody said you need to have at least 5 to 6 different streams of income. That's right. Yeah.
You're doing a good job to utilise that. Well done.
Thank you.
It's good the way how you've considered the way in which you can implement them, so as not to get overwhelmed or to be putting your energy into one rather than something else, and realising which ones are bringing the best return on your time investment. Yeah. Because I think in the self-employed journey, we realise how important our time is. Yeah. And how we actually invest it. So that's excellent.
Most definitely. And I think with this time now where we have this period where we're in our homes because of, you know, the quarantine lockdown, this has been like a perfect opportunity for me actually to focus on the things that I can develop. Like yourself, I love books. And one of my favorite books that I've read recently is by somebody called Jim Rohn. And he talks about the seasons of life being like the seasons of nature. Spring, you know, summer, autumn and winter. And he says in the spring season, you should be planting your seeds. So that's what I'm doing. In this spring season, I'm planting my seeds. So the online courses, the finishing of the books and things, so that when it's time to get a harvest, and when it's those times where it's the autumn or winter time of my life, those things will bring in a harvest. I'm planting for those times, you know. So that's been really important to me to understand that, you know, not everything that I'm going to do now to create multiple streams of income are going to happen now, but they're going to happen for the future. So,
and that's excellent, because that's really where I'm at with my journey with like being a Forex entrepreneur and just focusing, learning a new skill. because of course in the backdrop of doing that, I'm also still developing Health Renew.
Yeah.
Obviously not able to do colonics at the moment due to quarantine.
Yeah.
However, I've used the time to upskill in a way where I can utilize doing nutritional therapy consultations online.
Okay.
In a bespoke way, using a blood test to enable bespoke eating plans to be created.
Yeah.
And then I can coach people through those programs
Yeah.
over 3 months. So it can be done on Zoom, it can be done face to face when the time comes, but it's just another income stream and another element that I'm actually planting the seeds of right now. And I suppose it's really important because people are becoming more aware of their health because of the situations that have transpired recently.
Yeah.
And you know, it's an opportunity to be had. But in terms of the Forex trading, it's something that I'd always kind of thought I wanted to do, but I just never really knew how to do it or how it would fit into life and the accessibility element and knowing how to do it properly.
What is Forex trading? Because I don't really know what it is, and I'm sure some people who are listening to the interview might not know what it is. What is actually Forex trading, first of all?
So Forex trading is essentially buying and selling of currency. The same way that when we travel on holiday, we go to the Bureau de Change and we exchange our pounds for whatever the currency is within the country we've traveled to. It's the same with the Forex market, but just that you're doing it in an electronic format. You basically need to learn and understand when is the best time to go into the market and how to understand whether you make the choice to buy a particular currency pair or sell a particular currency pair. That's essentially what Forex trading is. There are other elements to it where you can trade in countries' economic statuses, and you can invest in companies, and there's loads of other elements to it.
And when you're selling the currency on, are you selling it on to like just ordinary people or back to companies?
It's basically happening within the market, basically an electronic transaction whereby you make money on the percentage increase of different currencies over periods of time.
Yeah.
So that period of time could be 5 minutes, 15 minutes, an hour, it could be a day, do it over a year. But essentially you make a decision on what you want to do based on how the market is, what you understand, and how you can read when to enter and leave a market. So that's the things that you learn as part of the process of doing trading. It's really interesting. It's really interesting. And it's actually a way of creating money by multiplying your money. So it's like putting your money in to create more wealth from the money that you've got. So it's like, you know, it's leveraging the money that you've got to make more.
That sounds so interesting. That is definitely something I probably will talk to you more about, you know, because I've never really heard of that, but it sounds really good. So for you, in terms of it being one of your multiple strands of income, has that been quite productive for you in terms of that, getting more income in?
It is productive, but with trading, it's a slow and steady journey.
Yeah.
So you're not looking to make millions of pounds overnight. It's something that you hone the skill and you develop it, and you're very focused on what you aim to make each time you trade. So you always have something called a trading plan, which sets out how much you want to make, so that it sets perimeters about how much you put at risk when you trade, and it minimizes the potential loss, because there's always a balance. Where you can gain, you can also lose. We know about that with anything else that we do, you know, in terms of business. So it's the same with the Forex market. So it's a very disciplined skill, but once you master it, it actually is quite rewarding over time.
But obviously it sounds to me like you're enjoying what you're doing, with this being a Forex trader and with your new journey as founder of your company, Health Renew. So what's been the most beneficial and most rewarding things about your new journey as, you know, a self-employed entrepreneur? What's been the huge highs for you at the moment with doing everything that you're doing? Can you tell me a couple of things that have been really positive for you in finding this new path?
I think it's really positive to know that I can help people, because ultimately that's what I started out in my career wanting to do, and got a bit disillusioned along the way, and then have now found the correct path. So I think that's really been quite empowering for me.
Yeah.
The other thing is that I feel like I'm just living my life.
Yeah.
The greatest thing in the world that you can do is have a career that actually doesn't feel like work.
Yeah. That is so true. That is so true. That is exactly how I feel at the moment. Even with the ups and downs and everything, I just feel like what I'm doing is natural. I'm a creative person. I love empowering people. You know, God's given me the gift of knowledge and empowerment, of bringing people together, empowering people and bringing hope. And yeah, you're so right. When I get up in the morning, I love getting up in the morning. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. Even if I do long hours or whatever I'm doing, it just doesn't feel like work. It just feels like what I'm supposed to be doing with my life. So true,
That's
yeah.
right. I feel like you're living your best life.
Yeah,
That's just how
yeah,
it feels, you
yeah.
know. And I think it's the beauty of being in control of that as well.
Yeah,
So there'll often be times when opportunities will present themselves where I could be back in employment.
yeah,
And the initial feeling is like, oh yeah, great, I can have money every month. And then
yeah,
I'm like, well, actually, then I have to be at work Monday to Friday or
yeah.
9 to 5 or whatever the stipulation or the dictation is for the time that this person wants in exchange for a monthly income. And
Mm,
then I'm like, well, actually, I prefer to be self-employed.
yeah. Even with all the challenges,
Yes.
and ups and downs, because there's been times where it's been financially hard and, you know, hard in different ways. Probably about 3 months ago, where emails just kept popping up in my inbox about, you know, training jobs and all these consultancy jobs. And for a minute, you know, you kind of glance at it and think,
Yep.
I think because of, you know, my faith and having that connection with God, knowing that that's not the path He had for me, and that those
That's right.
are a distraction. They're not going to take me to where I'm supposed to go. It's not going to bring me in contact with the people that, you know, I'm supposed to be helping. It looks quite tempting, but when I think back on it, I was never somebody that was cut out for an office environment. Every single
Yep.
job I had, I struggled. Okay, I struggled with it, and I did well in my jobs. I always
Yes.
worked for excellence. I was always somebody that gave above and beyond in my roles, you know, because I always felt like I was not just working for the company, that I was working for God, and that I wanted to be somebody, a woman of excellence. I wanted my work to be of a standard of excellence, but I always struggled in work environments. And it took me a while to understand, actually, not everybody is cut out for an office job, and there's nothing wrong with that. You know, you have people who are gardeners who love outdoors. They could never even work indoors. And you've got people who are meant to be creative. So you're meant to be doing things like, you know, helping people through their talents and skills in their own way.
Right.
That's me.
And I can totally empathize with that, you know, because I felt the same thing. Like, I think there was always an element of this kind of office politics and these underlying things that would often be going on that would probably either go over my head or under my feet. I'd never really quite be aware of it.
Yeah.
But then something would happen and it become crystal clear that this is all going on in the background.
Yeah.
You know? And because I never really was one of those people to partake in it, it was very difficult to work within it.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally
So I totally get that.
understand that. You know, and it made me uncomfortable, as a matter of fact, towards the end, because I had to make a decision. Because one of the other things that was happening is that the environment was starting to infect me, my character and stuff. Obviously, I've got things to pay for. Don't get me wrong. Me and my husband have things to pay for, you know. But I had to make a decision based on my character and my integrity to say, actually, I can no longer work here because of this. If I stay here any longer, it's going to infect me. And it's gonna, for me, it's gonna be a bad testimony to the witness that I have for God. Because then I will start to get involved in all these kind of horrible conversations, you know, very fake atmosphere, all these horrible conversations, you know, and I didn't want to do that. And I could feel myself getting drawn into this type of, I was like, you know what, it's time for me to go. So I never fitted in with the office culture. You know, your love always was, whether you were in traditional employment or whether you're on your new journey, was always about helping people. That was always your desire. That was always your thing, whether it was in your family, your community, your church, you know, in your traditional employment. So that was always going to be transferable. Helping people and wanting to help people and empower people, you've been able to do that. Obviously, your journey started in HR, but now you've actually, through your own personal experiences that were really painful, have now been able to transfer that into now empowering and helping other people with your new knowledge. And I think that's just wonderful. I mean, you've gone through a lot, and for you to be able to turn around those painful experiences to not only empower yourself, then to, you know, go on to build a business to help other people through your new knowledge. I take my hats off to you. You're an amazing woman.
Wow.
Amazing woman.
I feel like I'm blushing.
Take the compliment, because really and truly, the way you've been able to kind of pivot, not just your personal experiences, you know, transferring that to help other people, but then going into a different career and finding your way and stuff is admirable. I totally relate to some of the things that you've taken to, you know, get there. You know, obviously, whilst I was in my traditional employment, I was reading books, I was taking courses, I was doing things that were preparing me for that time, but not realizing at the time that God was preparing to move me out. So I think that's something that people can take away from that, from what we're saying, actually, if they really do want to step out for, you know, and start their own business or do their own thing. It's that whilst you may not see how it's going to come together now, but whilst you're in your situation, even though it might be difficult, you know, you may not want to be in a job, you want to move on or stuff. You may not even want to start a business. Maybe you want to move on to another job. Use the time that you have, and you may have to use your evenings. You may have to sacrifice that time to, you know, study up in the evenings or whatever. But
or the weekends even.
Yeah, and the weekends. But use that time to strengthen your confidence in those areas. Even though for 18 months I was chickening out, I didn't ever feel that I was lacking anything in terms of the confidence I had to start my own stuff. It was just fear of circumstances, like, how was I going to contribute to my household income? That was what my real core fears. Things that I was doing, I was already doing them, but it was just now having to do them without the safety net of.
Yes, that's right. And literally, it's one step at a time.
Yeah.
Like it's totally amazing how when you start out on the journey, it seems like such an insurmountable task.
Yeah.
But as you take one step in front of the other, and the way starts to become clear, you start to see the results, and you see how it's possible to not necessarily have the full picture, but to move with what you do have, you know? Like, something that always makes me laugh is my hair. So, like, you see my hair?
Yeah.
I always wanted to have twists like this in my hair.
Yeah.
But 5 years ago, I had relaxed hair. Yeah. And then, like, one day, I just decided to cut off all the relaxed ends, and my hair was, like, this short. And I was like, ugh, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
Lived through it, got through it, and now I'm at the point where my hair is now a lot longer.
Yeah.
And it's all natural.
Yeah.
And it was a journey. But if I never cut those bits off, took that drastic step to cut off from what I knew as my normal and what I was comfortable with, I would have never got here.
Yeah, it's always the first step that's the hardest. As I said, even with all the challenges and different things that have come up, I'm actually really enjoying my new life. We're both wives, we're both mothers, both are entrepreneurs, self-employed. And I was just going to ask you, how are you finding balancing work and family life? One of the things actually, since being in this whole quarantine period, obviously my husband's working from home, my daughter's homeschooling. I always work from home anyway. I've just had to rearrange around the times that I'm working. So when they're all working, I'm working. And sometimes, you know, and obviously I'm cooking, cleaning, doing things in between certain times. But then what I'm trying to do on Saturdays and Sundays is just to have that family time. I try not to work on the weekends at the moment. Normally, before this whole COVID thing, you know, I would be working at home and they would be out at work and school. I don't really think there's been much change really in terms of trying to balance everything, because I'll take a break from work to cook, or I'll take a break from work to go take my daughter to an appointment or whatever it is. But then I'll make up a few hours in the evening while she's doing homework or something like that. Or after she goes to bed, I might just prepare for the next day. Literally all it is that my work day is shorter and I work at the times that my family are working?
I think for me it's slightly different because I haven't been so used to having a schedule of being at home and working, because a lot of what I do tends to be out at clinics. So I tend to factor my day a lot around traveling to my locations, being there on time and being able to see my clients. So
Yeah.
I think at the beginning of lockdown, I don't think I really had much of a structure in terms of getting things done. But as the time has progressed, I've realised that actually if I don't get things done and do some work, then actually nothing's going to happen.
Yeah.
So I've been quite structured with my son. He tends to have quite a timetable set out by his school for him to complete the work that he needs to do each day.
Yeah.
So I tend to set time out in the morning to talk with him about what he's got to do and factor in his breaks and time out for him, because I think teenage boys find this lockdown thing a lot more challenging.
Yeah.
Because they've just got so much energy and they want to be boisterous, but yet they're cramped inside and there's not, you know, much room to be as boisterous as they might be at school. So that's been interesting. Also finding things for my daughter to do to keep her occupied, rather than her just doing the typical thing that kids want to do, like watching the iPad and watching the TV and just basically zonking themselves out on every type of technology they can lay their hands on.
So that is a challenge, because my daughter's 13 years old, and she, you know, if I'm being honest, she just spent a lot of time on her phone, just kind of reminding her to take those little breaks, something that I'm continuously trying to, well, both me and my husband are continuously trying to find a way of breaking up that time, you know.
And I think if we spoke to most parents about now, I think they'd be probably saying more or less the same thing.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I've spoken to a couple of parents and they're saying that, that, you know, they've got daughters the same age or sons the same age, and they're on the phone.
Yeah, and then just really looking towards managing how my children are eating, because what I find is that they're always saying, "Oh, can I have a snack? Can I have a snack?" Because we're at home and maybe they're just slightly a bit zoned out or not engaged enough, they seem to want to have some kind of snack as a result. So, you know, making sure that they're getting their 3 square meals so that there shouldn't be any reason for them to want a snack in between, so that I can actually know that if they ask for a snack, then it might not be a yes, it might be a no in some instances as well.
And I take it as well, because obviously of your own health journey and everything that you've been doing, obviously that your family's been having the benefits of that as well, because obviously what you eat or the things that you eat, you make adaptations for them.
On the balance of it as well, in as much as I've gone on my health journey and I have found alternatives and healthier options for my family, you know, I'm sharing this responsibility to bring up my family with my husband.
Yes.
So obviously when 2 worlds collide, there will sometimes be different views and perceptions of things. So it's also been a balance of transferring that knowledge in a way that keeps harmony. But how I manage that is by saying, okay, well, let's be measured about what we are doing and let's learn about what these foods are all about. So rather than it just being a thing of me telling, no, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do it, it's more about knowledge. And it's really so amazing how the knowledge transfers and how it comes back at me. So like there was like one day when my husband said, oh yeah, I'm gonna have some spirulina. I'm like, really? You're going to have spirulina? He's like, yeah, because it's got B vitamins in it and it's got this. I'm like, so it's actually, you know, the information is actually getting through. So even though I would rather everything be perfect, there'll be times when it won't be, but then there'll be times when the information that's being shared is actually still being taken on board and applied. You know, that's also another thing to be mindful of, because when I went on my health journey, I desperately wanted my husband to just completely join me, raw vegan diet, you know, enjoy the same foods I was eating, but actually he didn't want to come on that journey. So I had to find that balance, which meant that I would still be cooking meals that might be typical Caribbean meals sometimes, but I'd be making enough vegetables or a salad or whatever it was that I would be having, so that the family would still have some of what I was having alongside whatever they were having. So it helped to transition their taste buds and get them introduced to new foods and new approaches without them being completely turned off by the food because it's not what they were used to.
And that's actually a really good way of actually doing it. The fact that you didn't actually force them to do it, but gave them that information to make like informed choices about what they're eating. I just want to say to you, it's been a real pleasure to interview you, learn about your company and your journey to get to where you are now. You sound like you're in a really, really good place. Is there anything you would like to say to other women who might want to start their own journey of getting to find themselves or starting their own business? Is there any kind of thing that you want to say as, you know, something for people to take away today?
What I'd say is that your past experiences don't have to equal your future experiences. And if there's anything that's on your heart to do, it's not there for no reason. It's there because God has put it within you.
Yeah.
And you've just got to take some time to examine that and seek God and know how you can step out and make it happen. Realize that it is possible.
Exactly, nothing is impossible. But in terms of like strategic planning, I mean that sometimes people will look at something that they want to do and think, how am I ever going to do that? That seems impossible. But one of the things I think that is key is probably looking at things in small stages and planning small steps, rather than looking at the whole overwhelming picture, because people will stay stuck otherwise. They'll look on it and say, you know what, my heart's desire is to do this. I've always wanted to do this. But when I look on everything around me, when I look at those bills, when I look at the responsibilities that I have, it's just not going to happen. And that's what shuts people down. That's what I found anyway from experience.
Totally.
So
then working with someone like you is obviously going to be a way, I suppose in a way, that's what we both do, shows people how to actually take what they want to be to a reality, but just on different levels.
Exactly. Yeah. We're both on those paths, but doing it in different ways. That's exactly it. Giving empowerment to people through the ways that God's gifted us to do that, actually.
That's right.
So yeah, so how can people find out about your company if they want to get in contact and, you know, start their own health journey? Because, you know, many people go through different things. So how can they find you?
So currently, my website's under construction.
Okay.
But I am very active on Instagram.
Okay.
My Instagram handle, I'll pass it on to you so you can so people can you can share that below. And also I'm really active on Facebook as well. So those are the two places where you can really find me and you can find my footprint. I do colon hydrotherapy when we're free and out in the world. Anytime soon, in Chelsea and in Maida Vale. So I'm pretty well London based.
You'll be seeing me soon, because I'll be coming for a colonic as well. I'll definitely be in contact about that.
Yeah, excellent. And also my metabolic balance coaching is going to be launching at the end of the month.
Oh, fantastic.
And so there'll be more information on Instagram and Facebook, and also on my website once that's launched as well. So it's exciting times.
Yeah, most definitely. Seems like you're going from strength to strength. And I will, when I get your details, I will put the Facebook link and the Instagram link in the description box below.
You can also charter the success of my trading skill as well. Yeah. I've also got an Instagram page for that as well.
I just want to take this time again to thank you so much for agreeing to do this interview today. I thoroughly enjoyed myself. It's been the best thing all week, actually. You know, I love doing what I'm doing, but it's been nice to actually sit down and have a conversation with somebody. Obviously, I love my family, but it's nice to kind of connect with another woman and talk about our journeys and the things that we've been doing. So thank you so much, Alethia. I'll be in contact, and I will leave links below to where you can contact Alethia. Maybe you are interested in, you know, in this time, trying a different health strategy, especially because all I see people talking about on Twitter is their quarantine snacks. Maybe you've had enough of quarantine snacks and want to try a new path of healthy living, and I will leave those links below. But until the next time, take care.